My biggest loss when I went no contact was my big brother. I still miss him, which is bizarre because I don't even know him anymore. But he was my stability in the household. He was the only constant. My mother had been married several times. We'd been moved around several times. We lived with my mother. We lived with her parents. We had a lot of upheaval and a lot of people came and went. You know, narcissists don't maintain relationships really well. So the only person who was an actual constant all the way through up until my running away from home at the age of 13, I ended up living on the streets, was my big brother. And I loved him like he hung the moon. Unfortunately, he thought I was the favorite. So where I thought he hung the moon, maybe he didn't think I hung the moon. I know now he looks at me as the family liar and the fault lying with me, but maybe growing up, that's how he felt and I just didn't know it. It's funny that he would refer to me as my mother's favorite when I'm the one who got dropped out of the window by her and my arms got broken. So I don't know how he made that connection. I do know that she consistently played us off one another. There were times where they were stealing drugs from each other. My mother had an ashtray, crystal ashtray filled with pills on her nightstand. Illegal drugs, not prescription drugs. Well, illegal prescription drugs. So I guess they were both. And she always had pot. She always had hash. She always had something in the house. And her and my brother actually would steal things from each other because I would see them go in each other's rooms and I would say nothing. Like I didn't see anything. I was the monkey in the background. And when my mother would notice that things were missing, she would come into my room and ask me about it. And I would be like, I don't know. And then she would go to my brother and I could hear her. And I wouldn't dispute it because there was no point. I could hear her telling him, Marnie said that you went in and she saw you take the pills from the ashtray. He did take the pills. So how would he know I wasn't lying? She built a distrust between us. When we lived with my grandparents, sometimes she would pick me up and take me and treat me special and leave him behind without explanation. And sometimes she would pick him up and take him away like for the weekend. He was older and leave me behind. And I wouldn't see her at all. She would drop him off and go. She worked really hard to make sure that we never were united against her. So there was always this divide. Even though we loved each other, there was a divide. Not long before I went no contact, I was on the phone with my brother. I was in my early 20s and I trusted him enough to tell him that I had been raped when I was 12 years old. I had run away from home. I ended up getting in a car with this man who kept me all night long. That's how I lost my virginity. And I'm just lucky he decided to return me to my house and not kill me or sell me. I told my brother what happened, and he literally said the words, I don't believe you. You're a liar. Everybody says you're a liar. Everybody knows it. You've always been a liar. I would have been like 20 years old, and he would have been 25 or 26 at that time. It devastated me. And I didn't understand where it came from at that time. Fast forward, he was partly raised by the aunts who always called me a liar, like from the time I was 5 years old. And because I ran away from home when I was 13 and went missing and I was gone for 3.5 years, that title of scapegoat, black sheep, liar, living in an imaginary world, everything that's bad, troublemaker, was really branded on me, within me, by the entire family. And my brother was very exposed to that Kool-Aid. It was in his daily diet. That's not to absolve him from responsibility as an adult male that he is now, but it does make it a little bit more understandable. And by the way, that aunt, her own daughter, is no contact with everyone in the family. And nobody actually knows where she is. She lives off grid. If I had access to her, I would totally be standing with her, but I don't have that opportunity, unfortunately. When I went no contact with my brother told me, I'm not going to speak to you anymore. And we weren't really speaking at that point because of what happened when I disclosed the rape. But when I went no contact with my grandfather, who had been molesting me as a child, my brother called me. I probably hadn't spoken to him at this point in 3 years. And he said, how could you do that? And how could you not let him have access to your daughter and see your kids? What are you doing? He's an old man. You're going to give him a heart attack. And I just hung up the phone. I left it because he told me he was not going to talk to me unless I talked to my grandfather, which wasn't going to happen. My brother idolized my abuser, my grandfather. So when we look to our siblings to stand up for us and to stand next to us, sometimes it's easy to forget that they're also embedded into the same system and that their needs are different from ours. And for my brother to risk losing, especially my grandfather's long dead, yay, but especially for my brother to stand up to my mother and lose her approval, because he does get her approval. He did the right things. He married into a wealthy family. She loves that. There's her plan in old age. She knows that he's going to take care of her no matter what. And he's never going to be the black sheep or the scapegoat. He's never going to be looked upon as somebody who is a fuck up. Because if he goes no contact, then that blows apart her facade. So she needs to keep him happy and keep him engaged. And also, as her plaything, needs to keep making sure that he's always jumping through the hoops. My eldest daughter came to know him for a little period of time, and she would always say to me, it was really weird to see him interact with my mother, that when my mother would walk into the room, he would go, hi, mother, like in this very little boy way. And my daughter would say, like, it was very pronounced. It tells a story. So what's the takeaway here? Well, that you're not alone, even though they all left you alone. That there are a lot of us who are survivors of narcissistic abuse, and we're each other's siblings. We're each other's healing and support system. Because that part of that system, those relatives who stuck together, letting go of the expectation or the hope that anyone is ever going to come forward is a huge part of your healing journey. You will never find peace until you're able to let go of that. And if you realize that that is the norm, that that is what happens, and that it's not actually your fault or about you, it's about the disease within the narcissistic family system, it releases you for more healing. So if you would like to know more, if you'd like to work more on your healing, I am going to be doing a workshop at the end of March. You can go to the link that will be attached to this video, or you can go to my website, which will be at the end of this video, if you want more information or if you want to register. I also offer a free one-on-one. I work with survivors of trauma who have CPTSD, survivors of SA, and of course, survivors of narcissistic abuse. We are not alone. I just want you to know that. We are not alone.